when we look at Rob Anderson and Danielle Smith being probably the two most influential people within the UCP government, their desire to see a referendum on separation is high. They want to see that referendum, is my perspective. And just wanting to take us to a referendum is going to create so much uncertainty and so much problems that it's really troubling and disturbing. I know there is a perspective out there that thinks, well, this is just a negotiating tactic. And I have no time for that. Like, there are great ways to negotiate and get what you need in this confederation without threatening to leave.
Welcome to Municipal Affairs. As we head into the summer recess, the Alberta Legislature wraps up for a spring session that left no shortages of headlines. From contentious legislation to changes in leadership, the effects are already rippling out to communities, urban and rural, in the province. Two bills in particular, Bill 50 and Bill 54, are drawing sharp attention from municipal leaders. Critics say these laws signal a shift in power away from local councils, raising serious questions about the autonomy, accountability, and the province's evolving relationship with municipalities. Meanwhile, we've seen a shuffle at the top of municipal affairs, with MLA Dan Williams stepping into the role as minister. With new leadership comes new priorities and perhaps even new challenges. All this comes amid ongoing concerns over unpaid property taxes from oil and gas companies, an issue that continues to weigh heavily on rural municipalities and their ability to deliver essential services. Joining us today to break it all down is Kyle Kazowski, Alberta NDP Municipal Affairs critic. We'll get his take on the spring session, the impact of recent legislation, what the NDP is planning in the months ahead, and how municipalities can navigate an increasingly complex political landscape. So stay with us, as this is Municipal Affairs. Kyle, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the spring session and now the summer recess of the Alberta government, the Alberta Legislature. I want to start by looking back, if you don't mind. From your perspective, can you give me an assessment of how you felt, as from the NDP perspective, the spring session went of this last few months? Because from the municipal leaders I'm talking to, there's some contentious things that were going on this spring.
Yeah, Chris, and I think one of the things I've learned is I'm at about the 2 year mark of being an MLA, and I'll tell you what I've seen in this legislature with this UCP government is it's not like we learn about in social studies in grade 6. There's not a lot of consultation with the public. They don't go and seek a mandate for their legislation and then bring that into the legislature. They throw up some legislation into the assembly for debate. They let us debate it for sometimes the longest we had is 5 hours to debate some of the most transformative pieces of legislation that this province has seen. And the government is limiting that, and they're acting as if they have a strong mandate to bring forward the changes they are bringing forward, and they don't, and it surprises people and it shocks people. I think we're seeing an erosion in our democracy, and we're going to see some big changes that will change the way this province operates, especially at the municipal level. And the municipal leaders have pushed back, made their voices loudly heard as well as they can, but also knowing they have to work with the provincial government. So it puts them in this interesting position where they can't be too aggressive with this provincial government because they can be punitive at times against municipalities.
You talk about some of the transformative pieces of legislation, whether they be good or bad. And I can imagine from our conversation, there's probably going to be a lot more bad than good. But where's this coming from? Do you get a sense sitting across the aisle from the UCP that these pieces of legislation, whether it be Bill 50, Bill 54, is coming from somewhere, or is it party politics just being party politics?
Well, I think because they're pretty big pieces of legislation that cover off a lot of things. Um, I would say the push for the parts that are controversial come from a few places. There are some people in this province that believe controversies or conspiracy theories about voting machines. being rigged. These are not connected to the internet. They're just machines that count votes and help people. But so we have legislation that got brought in to get rid of voting machines in municipal elections and in provincial elections, which is frankly just going to make it so we have to hire more people to count ballots. And I think in municipal levels, when you think there's like you got to vote for mayor, you got to vote for your councillor for your specific ward, you got to vote for your school trustees. Usually they're large, complicated ballots. It's probably going to create a need for more ballots and more ballot boxes, and that comes from a part of the UCP that really subscribes to conspiracy theories that are being led by Fox News Network. Um, there is another element which is, I think, more problematic, which is a provincial government that usurps the authority of municipalities, not really having much respect for municipal leaders on their own decision making at the local level, and that want to come down and jump in and and overturn municipalities on decisions that don't align with the provincial priorities, whatever the provincial priorities of the day are. And I think that's been one of the more interesting, where I've even called authoritarian aspects of the Alberta provincial government's focus when they bring their legislation is just a desire to get down really into the weeds, into the local level, and tell municipal governments how to do their job. And we've seen it in they have repealed now the codes of conduct for municipal leaders, which is one of the ones that kind of really surprised municipal leaders across this province, where they were given the mandate to govern themselves according to codes of conduct that would allow them to be good representatives of their community. And now those have been removed, and there's nothing being put in place. Just an expectation that something will be put in place to replace the codes of conduct in the province.
So just picking up on that, if you don't mind for a second, um, the minister at the time, Rick McIver, said that the code of conducts were being weaponized in some councils, not all of them, but they were being weaponized. In your discussions with municipal leaders, had you heard of them being weaponized, or is this something else that could have just been the UCP wanting to do something to make it easier for people to break the law in some sense?
There are anecdotes of the codes of conduct being misused, but there are also lots of anecdotes of the codes of conduct doing a great job of keeping counselors, uh, from going into offices and berating staff and abusing their positions of authority. So there must have, is there a need to sort of maybe relook at codes of conduct and a way to make it better? I think that's true. So why not go review it, find a solution, and if you want to make it a provincial solution that applies to all municipalities and all municipal leaders the same, that sounds good. And I think most of the leaders in the municipalities across the province would say, okay, we can live with that. What's it going to be? So take the time, prepare it, roll it out, get some feedback, and then bring that into the legislature. But that's not what we have. They said, well, we're just going to get rid of codes of conduct, and we'll try and get that something put in place, shortly after the next election. So now we
Well,
have people that are
and
going to be
can I just
running in
pick up on
halls.
that for a second? Can I just pick that
Yeah,
up for a
yeah.
second, if you don't mind? Because that's the concern that I'm hearing when I speak to rural municipal leaders and urban municipal leaders from Alberta municipalities or rural municipalities of Alberta is a lot of these changes are taking place like on the doorstep of the next municipal election, which is, as of recording this, less than 4 months away from when we're recording this. Well, just over 4 months away. Is the government going too fast to try to solve an issue that municipalities are not even wanting to be solved? Because they want code of conducts, from what I'm gathering, but they want them used smartly, not to be weaponized. They want a proper ICF, which is in Bill 50, but they want it to make sure that it is done correctly and not pushed through without consultation by RMA and Alberta municipalities. Bill 54, we're seeing changes about these referendums, or however you want to call them, which we're going to talk about sovereignty in probably in about 2 seconds. But it seems like they're pushing a lot through on the cusp of a municipal election, which a lot of people are still confused about political parties from last year, and now we're adding this whole new context into it. Are is the province trying to confuse municipalities, do you think?
Um,
There's a lot
I
to
think
unpack there. I
no, I can.
apologize.
I've logged it all. I think that was a good question, Chris. I don't think the province is trying to confuse municipal leaders. I just think they don't want to do the work of actually talking to municipal leaders and then getting the feedback on ways to make legislation better. Instead, they bring it forward and then say take it or leave it. We're going to bring this legislation in without any consultation or preparation. They don't seem to want to do the work of governing, and I think that's one of the most alarming things. I think government and process of governing um, is sometimes getting into documents, reading through them, getting feedback, having a lot of discussions, and then bringing robust legislation forward. And I'll give the government credit for robust legislation, which they've brought forward. Early in their term, they brought forward the local government fiscal framework for Alberta. And they worked with municipal leaders for a couple of years to bring that in. And then they brought it in. It's good legislation. And the pot of money for municipalities needs to be larger. But the formula, it's a good formula and it's acceptable and it's robust. But we have not seen that from this government that likes to, govern by headlines and press releases. So they announced that they're getting rid of codes of conduct. Um, I don't think that was to confuse. I think that was to show that we're taking action. But then you get, everybody is kind of left dumbfounded and caught off guard and not sure how
In
to prepare themselves for the next day. And when we talk about the fall election, people are going to be running for this election with maybe an idea of what a counselor does. Um, and I think they might be surprised with the work that counselors actually do. It's really important work, but I think it would be nice to be prepared and know what you're getting into with this role and knowing what the codes of conduct and expectations of a counselor are before you run for political office.
when
Yeah.
you're talking to municipal leaders, like I assume you are, and I know you should never assume, but I'm going to assume for 2 seconds if you don't mind me, Kyle. When you're
Yeah.
speaking to municipal leaders, both urban and rural, do you get a sense that the relationship between the province and local governments is as strong as it should be, or is there much needed work that the province and in some sense the opposition, because I know you guys are in opposition and you always want to grow that relationship, but do you get a sense that the relationship between the governing party and municipalities is fractured right now when you talk to municipal leaders?
I think trust is gone, and that's a problem. The UCP don't seem to trust municipal leaders. And as a result, the municipal leaders don't have a lot of trust in the provincial government. They might have personal relationships that are fine and healthy, but when it comes to doing their work, they don't know how to count on the provincial government for consistent, reliable governing, and that creates. We were talking about confusion, but that creates that kind of level of uncertainty and that people don't do well with. I think as much as there's so much in this world that's probabilistic and uncertain, especially when we look at what's happening in the world with a Trump presidency. You know, back home, what can we do with each other? How can we be decent at government so that we can then create as much certainty for Albertans? I think that should be kind of a mandate for our relationship between municipal governments and the provincial government.
We are in a transition period right now. Minister McIver is now Speaker McIver, and now your sort of shadow person, your shadow opposition to now the Honorable Dan Williams, who is the Minister of Municipal Affairs, former Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. This was a surprise when I was speaking to Tyler Gandam and Cara Westerland of AB Munis and RMA. They both said that they were looking for someone who had some municipal experience prior to being appointed in that position because there's a lot of challenges going on. The premier decided that they were going to appoint Dan Williams, no, without the recommendations of RMA and AB Munis. From your perspective, do you think Dan Williams is the right fit for municipal affairs?
Yeah, I think that's yet to be determined. I mean, there's an interesting thing. He is, a huge part of his own constituency is one of the largest municipalities in Alberta, Mackenzie County. I mean, maybe it is the largest municipality. So that's an interesting kind of perspective he's going to be bringing in from Northern Alberta, which I think's probably going to be of some value. That special municipal district is going through its own, you know, transformation right now. They have recently gone from 10 councillors and 10 wards down to 9 previous to ahead of this upcoming election. Their status as a specialized municipality is up for discussion right now. And so, maybe his perspective and ability to focus on that will be good. Um, as he's now in charge of bringing forward codes of conduct for the whole province, and I think that's an interesting thing. Earlier in his first term, he is the MLA that kind of developed a reputation for the guy that cracked a beer in the legislature, which it's probably not the best. He had to apologize for. It's not the best conduct of a legislator. So I mean, maybe he's learned from that, and we'll see where he goes from that. I think he probably brings a good heart and interest in this. But it's sort of yet to be determined. We got to give the minister some runway to see how he's going to be operating, in this important role for municipalities.
This is a question about Minister Williams, but also about what Minister McIver said at the spring session of Alberta municipalities in Edmonton earlier this year. During Minister McIver's speech to delegates, he said that if someone has a problem with their property taxes, get the people of your community. He's telling this to the delegates, the municipal leaders. Get the residents of your community to call the provinces because of the educational property taxes that was going to be increasing. Now, I can imagine, as I have heard, you have heard about municipal leaders being upset that the property taxes is skyrocketing some of the property bills that are going out or have been sent out. The municipalities are looking at ways to potentially say, province, can you collect the provincial education property tax? Does the NDP see working more collaboratively with municipalities to ensure that the property tax increase from the education portion of it is more collaboratively done rather than just forced upon municipalities to collect at the end of the day?
Chris, there's a lot to unpack with that. First, I'll
But
say,
it's
like, from my
something that
perspective,
I'm hearing a lot of. And it
yeah,
is something that, because everyone is getting their property taxes as we're recording this, because I just got mine yesterday.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the first thing I did was looked at how much my increase was from the municipal perspective and the education perspective. And from the
yeah.
education line item, I can tell you it is a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. And that is where the big chunk of my tax increase is coming from, is the property tax from
Yeah.
education.
So the first thing I'd like to bring up about that, the very first piece of legislation the UCP brought in when they became government, Bill 1, was a mandate that the provincial government, that in Alberta, we will not raise taxes in Alberta without going to a referendum. And that's not I mean, it was just showmanship by the UCP, because they have just raised everybody's taxes in this province and they didn't go to a referendum. There's a backing up, there's a social contract in this province, which, the first act of our legislature in 1905 was the 1905 Education Act. And so publicly funded education is essential in this province, whether or not you have children or grandchildren. We want to make sure that our citizens get access to really good publicly funded education, and that's of high priority. So putting so let's just park that there. That's just a really important position of the New Democrats, and I think something that's shared by all Albertans. Now, when it comes to the burden of collecting taxes and being able to pass the buck over to the municipalities, that's a really unfair. And so I've really appreciated, like I've seen municipalities now making sure with your tax bill, you get a full breakdown of where your property taxes are going so that you understand that really a small portion goes to your local municipal government. The majority comes to the provincial government, which we use to fund public education in this province.
The other big important development this spring session was the ongoing issue around unpaid oil and gas taxes from quote unquote zombie companies, as RMA has so colloquially coined them. Um, seems to not be going away, and RMA, from what I gather, is getting more and more frustrated that the provincial government isn't stepping in because the more and more these oil and gas companies fail to pay their property taxes means that the residents of these rural municipalities are on the hook for increases to their own property taxes. I know it has been discussed in the legislature from your perspective, asking the Minister of Energy, not from you, but from your caucus.
Yeah.
How can this be solved soon? Because municipalities have been dealing with this for 7 years and they don't want to deal with it for an eighth.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it. Like it's 7 years, don't want to go into eight. There is this misconception uh, that seems to be widely held that our oil and gas industry is so marginal that it would collapse if someone sneezed next to it. Um, we have a robust, strong oil and gas industry, and they have the ability to pay their property taxes. And so we have this dynamic inside the UCP cabinet, which shows how disconnected and they are and fractured they are. Because I've asked the former Minister of Municipal Affairs and said, we're going to get uh, oil and gas companies to pay their taxes. Everybody needs to pay your taxes. I need to pay my taxes. You need to pay your taxes. We all have a responsibility to pay our taxes. And then in the same, like within a half hour moment, I've had in the legislature, the Minister of Energy, acknowledge that he removed the requirement that businesses pay their property taxes in order to get new licenses to drill in this province. And so it seems quite straightforward that we had a stick, and it's not a burdensome stick. It was just a stick that said, if you want to continue to grow your business, you want to continue to drill more wells in this province, pay the taxes you owe. And we have one ministry that is saying we want to get it done, and we have the other ministry that has the authority to enforce it that is not getting it done. And it's all being supported by the premier. So the premier can make this change and can require it of her cabinet, and she won't, because when it comes to, oil and gas versus Albertans, um, somehow the premier doesn't want to back Albertans because municipalities are then being asked to pick up the slack or pull back services from their citizens in the rural municipalities of Alberta.
I want to turn to the future now because we are a few weeks after the spring
Oh,
session wrapped up, and you are about to hit my favorite part of Alberta's history. Pancake Circuit Days, where you're going to be flipping pancakes from Edmonton to your own constituents, to Whoop Up Days, to Calgary Stampede, to Grand Prairie, all across this great province. What do you expect your role to be during these summer months? Because you don't return to the legislature until October, potentially after the next municipal elections. So, what is your role going to be over the next few months to ensure that you connect with municipal leaders from across the province?
yeah, and there is a plan I'm mapping out right now. A lot of it is, I'm in a great municipality of Strathcona County in Sherwood Park, and so there's great ways to stay connected within my own region to municipal leaders. But there is going to be parades in Ponoka, parades in Gibbons, parades in Airdrie, the Stampede. Before I got into this role, Chris, I'm like, why as an elected representative from Sherwood Park, do I need to go to the Stampede? it's a political convention, and there will be municipal leaders from all over Alberta there, and it's a great chance for me to connect. And one of the things I do appreciate is like Alberta municipalities as an organization make sure that they get out and do outreach all across the province. And there's an opportunity for me to go in and visit with groups of municipal leaders at those events as well. And the RMA does something similar. So I mean, a lot of parades, a lot of pancake breakfasts, a lot of festivals, and it's really actually a delight in this role to be able to have conversations all across the province where people are living in kind of a recreational, relaxed setting.
You are, prior to recording this, you told me that you were about to head out on the doors because three by-elections in Alberta have been called. When you're door knocking, if you haven't already, but I'm assuming you have, what are you hearing at the doors right now? Because that's the best way to connect with Albertans is actually go up to their door and knock on it, and by-elections are the best time to do that. What are you hearing from Albertans right now, Edmontonians or Didsbury residents, Olds, Three Hills residents, if you've gotten down this far? What are you hearing from residents as you knock on their door?
Yeah, you know, it's what so some good things and some more troubling things. The good things is like it's there is we got a pretty good we got a good pretty great place here in Alberta to be living. And summer's here. And so you know, people are focused on high school graduations and their summer vacation plans, and it's great to connect with people on that. On the political side of things, one of the more interesting things, Chris, is just a level of intentionally disconnecting from all things government right now. And that's interesting, especially during a by-election. You know, by-elections are not on people's tops of mind, but people overall, and I think it has to do with just sort of like our interesting media world and there's too much bad news coming in. People would rather just focus on what's right in front of them, and they kind of feel like their participation in our democracy is not is not top of mind for them. And so that's, I think, more one of the more troubling things, and that requires even more door to door, more connecting, and just making sure people know that what they say matters. Well, how it would also help is if when a government gets a mandate, they bring legislation in that was that political mandate. And I think part of the problem in Alberta is we've seen the UCP did not campaign on separation. They did not campaign on taking Albertans out of the CPP. They did not campaign on Alberta Provincial Police Force. They did not campaign on mining the Rockies. And so when we see these acts by the provincial government that are not connected at all to what voters asked for, it creates a level of disconnection and disenfranchisement, and that's really troubling. So that's one of the things I've sort of observed on the doors.
Okay, you broached the subject, so I have to ask the question because if I don't, then I know I'm going to get an email from someone in the other side of the aisle. Do you actually believe, does the NDP actually believe that Daniel Smith wants to separate from Canada?
So at the core, when we look at Rob Anderson and Daniel Smith being probably the two most influential people within the UCP government, their desire to see a referendum on separation is high. They want to see that referendum, is my perspective. And just wanting to take us to a referendum is going to create so much uncertainty and so much problems that it's really troubling and disturbing. I know there is a perspective out there that thinks, well, this is just a negotiating tactic. And I have no time for that. Like, there are great ways to negotiate and get what you need in this confederation without threatening to leave. And I'll take it back to when the New Democrats were government. Our motto was let's get Canada working. And we were able to get permission through BC to expand the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And I don't know how you're going to get permission for corridors that are going to allow us to move more of our product out of this province. I don't know how you're going to get permission from other people to give access to their territory when what we're asking is to leave. It it's it doesn't match up. I think most Canadians would like to know, hey, Alberta, you're leading the way. What you're doing is great. Lead out, keep leading. We want to follow you. What are you doing? You're doing all the right things. And I think that idea of leading Canada is Alberta's role within our confederation. And the idea of leaving it, we shouldn't even be talking about it. There's so many better ways to work within our confederation and be, as we're heading towards Canada Day, and the pancake circuit, and we're going to be celebrating this great nation. I think staying focused on Canada is the way that Alberta should move forward.
So my last question, and this is kind of an open-ended one, so take your time to answer as in-depth as you want. But what do you want Albertans to know who are watching this? If they're sitting down in front of their couch right now watching this, what would you want Albertans to know about what Alberta NDP has done over the last 6 months in the spring session and as they head into the summer months?
I think we will continue to listen to Albertans and try and bring that reasonable voice into the legislature. I think this opportunity to continue to be decent, ethical in the legislature. I think that's important for Albertans to know because I know that they want competent, ethical government. I mean, we've heard so much about the corrupt care scandal with this government. We know that there's a problem of abuse of power, and we look back to like periods of time like the Redford government with the Sky Palace and what the current group of UCP are doing puts that into very small perspective. The misuse of government money by this government is really egregious and really problematic. And so I think I just want Albertans to know we're the reasonable people's party. Like that is who we are. We just want to do the good work of governing with a strong mandate from Albertans to make sure that we are making this a prosperous, growth-oriented province where everybody gets brought up with good public education, functional healthcare system, and good clean air and water to live a good life in Alberta.
Well, MLA Kozowski, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Enjoy the pancake circuit as I coined it, and I feel like that's what I'm going to only use for the rest of the summer now. But thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and chat about municipal affairs and what the Alberta NDP has done over the last few months. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Have a great summer, and thanks for all the good work you do for municipalities across this country.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of provincial politics from a municipal perspective. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube, or by visiting us on all social media channels to never miss an upcoming episode. Now, if you want to learn more about the communities and the people that we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.